You are writing policy for rural healthcare expenditure and have $150,000 to spend. How do you think you would best spend this to accommodate rural health issues in Australia?
G'day.
Hi.
I'm Tom.
Hi, Tom. Tom, have you read the prime?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, please begin.
No worries. Okay, so I think the first thing to address is that $150,000 is not a lot of money at all. Not to say it's nothing, but it's not enough money to build a new clinic or do something very crazy. So I think it kind of depends what the overall purpose of that spending is. And in writing policy, I think that it's very easy to try and make what might be considered more sexy things by doing it at the end of healthcare. It's kind of like the last stage, subsidizing certain drugs or buying a new ECG machine or something like that. But I think that's a kind of superficial approach to health, and that ultimately the biggest impact I can have with my $150,000 is probably in some sort of education program. So specifically, I'd really like to model my project on a similar type of project that they did on trachoma in Indigenous communities. Trachoma is like a condition where you have you get this bacterial infection in your eyes, and it's associated mostly with cleanliness. All you have to do is wash your face regularly, and you usually don't get this disease. So they did a little pilot education study in an Indigenous community to show that if you wash your face before and after the football game and sort of brought in this whole public health campaign around it, it actually reduced the rates of trachoma by a huge amount. So I'd like to do something similar in a rural area around mental health. Particularly, I think the stigma associated with asking for help with, in particular, maybe farmers, more isolated from certain medical access and clinics and things like that. So with $150,000, I could probably fund 2 or 3 sort of campaigners to go quite literally organize visits with different farmers and to go in and talk about mental health and give them certain brochures and educate them about the different, how common it is, how many people take medication, how normal it is, different helplines and different access that they have. And I think that especially if you target it one small town at a time, like maybe Charlton or areas around Bendigo, and really focus in on that area. As a policymaker, I can use that as a sort of study to show that look, mental health in this area has really improved. There's been far less suicides, far more engagement of different groups with doctors, and try and use that to potentially get myself more money for other projects around Australia. But really focusing specifically on agriculturalists, farmers, and farmers' families in mental health issues. I think it's a really specific way to use that $150,000.
Okay, and for the next question, you, in writing the policy, encounter some difficulty within the local community. How do you think you would best proceed?
Sure. So I think whenever you experience difficulty, you want to take a step back and think about why they feel that way. So obviously I'd want to know what kind of difficulty it is, whether it's that they think that we're sort of, stereotyping the town, or that they think it's not an issue. And I think there's an opportunity, again, because it's a small project and I would be identifiable in that. I'd maybe host a small forum, a public forum in the town, at one of the halls or something like that, and just open up the discussion with them about why they think it's not an appropriate campaign, and I would be open to changing the way we use the money around what they would recommend. And I could also use that opportunity. It's almost good because, even though they're upset, that kind of engagement is important because they've shown that they actually care about this issue. And so I can even use those conversations as an opportunity to talk about the issue, why it is important, and then maybe slightly adjust the way I implement the money based on those conversations.
Final question.
Mm-hmm.
You are now policy writing for all of Australia, and your money has the limit of the Australian budget. Would you change the way that you have answered your first question, given that it's now on a national scale?
Sure. So I think the way that I implement my change doesn't doesn't change. So
Sure.
I still think mental health in rural communities is a problem. But now changing it into this sort of national budget, it obviously puts, one, a lot more resources at my disposal, but two, I should have access to a lot of expertise, a lot of data and studies around where our resources should go. And in any system where there's a finite amount of resources, we need to define what we're trying to achieve, what is the maximum effect of any given dollar towards that original goal, and then I should implement the money in order to maximize that outcome. Now, there are different ways to define that, and I honestly doubt if governments define things in this kind of analytical way. You can think about length of life, you can think about satisfaction, you can think about these things called dailies, disability adjusted life years. So basically like how long have you had a certain quality of life for, which I think is probably one of the better measures. And then we should look across the whole portfolio at like the different areas and assign budgets to local targeted teams in a similar way that will try and enact change in certain targeted areas, as well as thinking about overall our public hospital systems, our local and rural GPs, but ultimately working with existing experts in the field, but taking a more analytical approach to maximise the benefit of every dollar we spend. But it's obviously very difficult. I'm not an expert in this area.